Hi, friends and family. Here we are back on the Purple Couch. Today, I am honored and grateful to have our District 4 representative for our school board district, Matt Susin, here with us today. I brought Matt in because his beliefs stand firm with what we've been talking about here on the Purple Couch. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about personal expression, that's what's in my mind, and I'm thinking about the Purple Couch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Personal expression, our school system, how do we work together? You've heard us all the time talking about the family must work with the school. Well, guess what? Our representatives for our district will also be working with the school and working with us, parents and caregivers, moms, dad, grandmas, grandpas. Because what you've got to realize is as a community, we are all connected. Even if you don't have children, you are still affected by those of us that do. I know, sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad, especially as we talk about the teenage. More than bad?
More good than bad.
Okay.
More good than bad.
All right. Until you're on US 1 and you see, the car's driving fast and you're going through, but yeah. We want to take and reach out to all of our families to understand that we do have a voice. And with Matt having him here on the couch today, I want to give you a little background on what Matt represents here for Brevard County.
Welcome to Pam and the Purple Couch podcast, hosted by Pamela Furr, with our co-hosts, Dr. Manny Rodriguez, Missy Owen, and Loki DePristo. Together, we're going to dive deep into topics such as education, neurodiversity, autism, and applied behavioral analysis. Remember to click subscribe today so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
So, Matt, can you tell our viewers a little bit about your background and what got you into the education realm?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. So I used to, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher. So my family, I was the eldest of all of my cousins. I have 27 cousins on my dad's side, 21 on my mom's side.
Wow.
So I was always the eldest. So I was always the one that was taking care of them. So I always wanted to be a teacher. My life when I got out of school took me into government in Tallahassee. And after 4 years, I said, if I don't make the choice now to make this decision, I'm not going to. So I moved to Brevard County, and I became a teacher at 2005 at Space Coast High School. And I loved it. I taught for 9 years. I gave the passion. Every one of the students with disabilities or the students who had behavioral problems were put into my classroom because I always felt like they were gems and I always respected them and worked with them. So my passion came through the classroom. And then unfortunately, like many other teachers, I found that I was not able to continue that journey because of the finances of my family. Many people know I had a growing family, so I needed to move and open up an insurance business. So when I made that transition, I took about 2 years. And then I got mad at an issue at the school board like everybody does. That's how everybody runs. I ran and I was able to win a school board. And for the last 8 years, I focused on many different areas of the educational system with a lot of passion. And I would love to talk more about it in this podcast today.
Oh, wonderful. No, so funny. I'm listening to him. You hear that insurance, education? I'm going, oh my goodness, we have a lot in common, sir. In that aspect, when you're in the classroom and you actually have lived it, it's so nice to hear. That's refreshing, especially for us here on the couch, because you are walking the walk because you've experienced it. So many times, a lot of our parents and our caregivers that tune in are new to the neurodivergent world. Mm-hmm. And when I say neurodivergent world, we're not just talking autism, right. ADHD, ADD. People don't realize that even in the classroom setting, when you have ADD or ADHD, it's hard to sit still for 6 hours. So we have to look at those things and different approaches. So I just want to take a moment to tell you that I am grateful because you are a voice for us. Moms and dads that have neurodivergent children that are making a stand, not just in that aspect, but I love your community involvement. Can you talk to our audience about how you've been advocating for job placement, especially for our neurodivergent children here in Brevard County?
So many of the situations that we have is that we have students that are a part of our BLAST programs. If people are not aware of that, but those are the transitioning out students with disabilities that would be the autism and on those spectrums and stuff like that, and Asperger's. So what happens in many cases is that those students transition out of our schools at 22 years old and they're not picked up to go to work. And that is the worst thing when you spend an entire lifetime of going in inclusion inside of classrooms and trying to work with other people. And then all of a sudden it just digresses and it really wears tires the parents out, because now all of a sudden they have a student that slowly becomes, you know what I mean, more and more quiet, more and more upset. So what we did was I immediately, about 4 years ago, I started a jobs program for students with disabilities through vocational rehab, and it became so big. I mean, you're exactly right. There's not only students with autism and Asperger's, but there's also students with extended time on tests and stuff like that we need to recognize. And so what I did was I found that there's a federal guideline for contracts with federal companies that 7% of their workforce have to be people with disabilities, and that's never audited. So I found that, I called them to the table, and I said, we have students with disabilities. They're able to come to work for you for free through this program. Please hire them. I also called the Home Builders and Contractors Association and had all the Home Builders and Contractors Association come in. So we had a big conference. We talked about it, and then we unleashed it. And we actually had the kids sign up. The way it works is at 14 years old and older, they're allowed to fill out a form. That form goes up to the vocational rehab office in Tallahassee. They then turn around and they get all the paperwork done. And that student, once it's filled out and they find a provider like Brevard Achievement Center or something to be the in-between, they're able to go to work for free for that company. All the company has to do is sign the wages. So all of a sudden we had more students than, so Brevard County, after 3 months, had more students in Brevard County than the rest of the state combined.
Wow.
And so that was just within 3 months. I was standing on tables at Rockledge High School to get kids involved. I said, listen, you can go to work for free. Now, let me explain how amazing this program is. So if a person goes to work at that place and they're to be paid $21 for that job, that means that the $21 is what the vocational rehab will pay. So it's not like they have to get paid minimum wage. So if a company is willing to take it on, now, many people don't understand, but the students that are inside of our vocational rehab and trades programs, almost 70% of those students have students with disabilities that are on the piece, so they qualify. So some of the biggest need inside of our community right now is workforce for manufacturing and construction.
Yes.
And those students all qualify. 70% of them that are actually getting certified actually become free to work for these. And not only that, but the third party, like Brevard Achievement Center and others, works as a job placement, and they work with them on resumes and how to do better. And if the employment says, hey, we're having an issue, then we can go ahead and, you know what I mean? They'll work with them to bedify. I was sitting with a man who owns the FBO. It's a place where private jets fly out of Tyco in Titusville. And I was explaining it to him, and he said to me, you know what people in this country and in this community sometimes don't do is they don't understand that it's our responsibility as human beings and citizens to work with the next generation.
Yes.
So I took his words and I basically went to all the other companies and everything else. Now what happened is it was so successful that I was honored in the National Vocational Rehab conference, and I gave how we did it in Brevard to every other place in the country. And then COVID hit. Wiped the whole thing out.
Gotcha.
So now now I'm here to announce, and this is where I wanted to do it, is that we now are bringing it back. But the time before that we did it was that it was voluntary for the student to go ahead in and fill out the paperwork. And I was forced to run into cafeterias and baseball games and football games to try to get kids to sign up. Now, every time somebody goes in for an IEP and they don't have the form filled out and they're 14 years or older inside of our schools, they will have the form put down in front of them.
Oh, I love
that they
this.
have to fill it out.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Now, what happened the last time we did this, and I'm sorry I keep talking, but I'm so passionate.
No, please, I love it.
The last time we did this, it was so tough on vocational rehab because they'd never seen this amount of influx that they had to move representatives from surrounding counties to come in to fill out the paperwork. So we've already called vocational rehab up in Tallahassee and said, this is about to happen. And so this month is the first month they started getting placed down, and vocational rehab's hair's on fire right now because there's so many of these forms going through. The problem we have is that on the other side, now all the kids sign up. The worst thing you can do is tell a kid that they can go do something and then not have an avenue for them to do it. So now this is the next phase where we're asking companies to be a part of this. There's a lady named Yvette Cruz at the school district that's the cornerstone of the entire project. She's in the communications office. She's going to be the point person to get moving. But the thing is that 2 weeks ago at the Economic Development Council meeting where we had Health First and NASA and Amazon and all of them, Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, I said to all of the groups, I said, we're about to start this program. We would love to have all of you guys do that. And Health First stood up and said, we will hire every student that leaves Brevard Public Schools from here on out. So there's 40 to 50 students with extreme disabilities that we're talking about earlier that come out of there that now are going to be hired.
I just got to, we
That's
all
amazing.
right now are
That's
so elated with this
That's
because
awesome.
that's advocacy in action.
Yeah.
You didn't just sit back on the sidelines.
Right.
And families, this is why I'm coming to you. You need to go to the ballots. You need to make sure that your voice is heard because just like Mr. Susin here, he is making sure that he's not sitting on the back lines. He is out there advocating for our families, for our kids. And like he stated in the beginning here, we don't have to have children to be a community. This is everyone that drives up and down the road. And this works not just in Brevard County, but in the counties that you're in right now, not just here locally. This is a nationwide program. So please understand that there are resources that are available, but we've got to be able to put our boots on and go out there and do the work to make sure that our kids have these opportunities. So as a mom, thank you, number one. Congratulations, get out there advocating. And number two, thank you, Brevard workforce. Just to hear that, because Puzzlebox is a member of the EDC as well. And I love that because we want to, it's the community again. And everything that we've got going here in Brevard County, I mean, we are blowing up in this wonderful world. So between all the new businesses coming in, but to hear that these businesses on your poke, because look, let's all be real. If you weren't poking the bear, you know, so please give yourself some credit there. Do you hear me, families? He does not mind poking the bear. And that's exactly what we need. We need someone that's out there using their voice that can be loud enough to hear. Okay. When you're at home and you're complaining, what are you doing about it besides making the problem worse? Let's get out there and let's put some action to those words. Hearing that our kids and our families here in Brevard have this opportunity fills my heart because we've had episodes here on the podcast talking about what happens next and the devastation that families go into personal crisis that they're like, okay, just like you said, 22, where do we go now? What do we do?
Can I be honest with you?
Yes.
I do some time over at Daily Bread. And I taught 2,000 students. Many of them were put in my class for disabilities because I would be the one that would really work with them. And I didn't mind that at all. I worked with them every time. But I'm going to try to keep from getting choked up. But when I was at Daily Bread, I saw a lot of my students with disabilities on borderline extreme that were now homeless. And I promised myself I would never have that happen again. And that's where some of the passion, if anybody ever saw the light that was inside those children's eyes inside the classroom that is now dimmed as they try to fight every day under a bridge or something like that, it's sad. And I've got a couple that I'm trying. I went out and tried to find one the other day. It's a passion. But I did want to say one thing, if I may.
Yes.
So during this process, many employers, and I want them to know this if you're watching this, there's the students with disabilities are not it is an advocacy that they are actually more qualified to do work in many cases than students that don't. And I want to explain this.
Yes.
This needs to be said because there's a lot of employers out there that haven't found this out. And Health First did. And that's why they said that the students' work ethic is 10 times better than the normal students without disabilities. I'll just say it. But there was one unique factor. So we all knew Linda Weatherman from the EDC. Yes. She brought me and said, and this was all part of her work too, 4 years ago. And she said, there's a program in Germany and they do coding. It's a company in Germany that does coding, and they only hire students with disabilities that are on the spectrum. They hire students with autism and Asperger's and everything else. And those students actually outperform 2-to-1 other coding individuals in other factories. They only do it. And the thing is they say they have 0 days that they're sick. They work every day. And they said they would rather be there the whole time.
Yes.
And they work together, and it's a culture. And she said, why in the Space Coast, where we have all this communications going on, we have all this ability, are we not tapping those individuals that have the most proficient area to do this? There's no doubt they're brilliant. And I feel
100%.
I feel we just haven't found the actual home for them, and we haven't done a good job of placing them. But in every job that they go to work, it's phenomenal what they do.
Yes.
And we just need the companies to understand that it is a definite positive.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up because the three of us here on the couch, we've been working on a project, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. A lot of times our employers don't understand our neurodivergent community. When you've got a 30-year-old that may do this, that's a little standoffish and they don't understand the processing that's taking place. So we've been advocating, going in and helping companies understand, well, how do we make this more proficient for the neurodivergent learner? And it's funny, I've been asked to come in and be like, well, if I can look in the room and I see one or two that have headphones on that are sitting in the back, I normally tell you, well, we need to work on our inclusion process here. Yep. Why can't everyone have headphones on? Because now I'm already looking at your outliers. But you're 100% correct, because our neurodivergent community of workers are there to do a job. They're not there to do the water cooler chat.
Yes.
They're not there to get distracted on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media. They're like, no, I am here. I am focused, because they're hyper-focused. And yes, even with the coding, with manufacturing, things along those lines, when you're looking, let's benefit the company by using the workforce. This is why Jeff Bezos is looking for all of our wonderful Aspie kids, because they work in numbers. Numbers don't lie. So I understand completely, because we work in this. All three of us can sit here, and while you're talking, we're nodding our heads. For those of you all that do not see this on video, as Mr. Susin was talking, we're just shaking our heads, nodding. We weren't talking. And for us on the podcast, that's, an unusual thing.
We're in shock of all the things you're saying, like pleasantly shocked. Like,
Yes.
This is cool stuff.
Well, I'll be honest with everybody here. If there's one job that we have, is we need to have our students inside of our schools be workforce ready. If there's anything that we do, if there's any overview, any achievement level, just make sure you're workforce ready. And with students with disabilities, it's been a difficult transition and journey, because many of the individuals that are in place, like you said, have not had that experience, nor do they have the experience of the other side. So you have employers who don't know that these students are really good. Right. You have teachers who don't know the employment world, and you have barriers to getting these children there. This program streamlines that and goes.
I love that.
We have advocates from from families that are now popping up, that are now they're saying, I will go to businesses and talk about this program. So they're called like my advocates.
Love it.
I will tell you, you get us student parents with students with disabilities, and they are the strongest advocates I've ever been around.
I'm kind of giggling here, because my families know, don't you? There's nothing like an autism mama, daddy, or grandpa or grandma, right? Because you've never met an autistic child like my autistic child. And that's what we all have, because there are unique abilities and opportunities with every child. I think one of the themes we've always talked about here is that these are not deficits. I was hard on my son who's neurodivergent, because I never treated him like he had a disability. And to a lot of families, it came across in our environment when they would see us like, oh my gosh, he's being so hard on him. And I'm like, no, I'm preparing him for the real world. Because in the real world, if he's jumping up and down and he's out in la la land, just like we were talking about with business owners, they're not educated. It's ignorance. That's all this is. And we need to educate the community, because now, here he is, 19. He's one of the best employees ever. He doesn't miss work. I'm talking about rise, shine, it doesn't matter. And he has a way of looking at life differently, where what is it now, Gen Alpha? Isn't that what we decided that's what? The new Gen Alpha that's coming out. It's all of our kids that are in school now.
Z and Alpha.
To be able to take a different approach. And if that's what we can do as a community to get to our business operators and owners and manufacturing companies, not just that, let's look at our community partners. Like he was stating, we have NASA here, we have Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, we've got LG3, which is, how all that merger that came on, and then Health First here. Health First in Brevard County is one of our largest hospital systems. And for us Gen Xers back in the day of the candy stripers, we had this conversation, I think in season 1 of the show, was there's so many opportunities for our children as long as we can educate and we can stand together. One of the biggest things I know we've talked about with our high schoolers here is opening that door of understanding.
Right.
And
give them a chance.
You have done that from the teacher aspect because you were into that community. I feel so much with what you were saying, because we have a joke here, is the hardest student, those are my favorite students, because those are going to be our leaders. They're the ones that stand up against the norm, and they're like, I don't think so. I'm going to question it. Why? Because then we can expand. So we want those free-spirited students.
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah.
So I had a student the other day. He was one of my toughest, but I loved him. And I'm going to say his name, Alex Delhagen, and he'll admit it when we're there. So the other day, Alex Delhagen calls me and he said, "Hey, I have a student. How you doing, Mr. Susan?" I was like, "Oh," and I always see these kids as 18-year-olds. Like I still see them as 16-year-olds. He's like, "Hey, I have children and I'm married." And I said, "When did that happen?" Wait a minute, right? But what happened is that he asked me, he said, he told me what he does now. So Alex was the hardest kid that we ever worked with. And he was really tough, but it wasn't because he was disrespectful. It's just because he saw things a little bit different. Now Alex is now the manager of 17 Walmart stores.
Oh my goodness.
And when I told him when we had this big expansion of sports that we were doing inside the schools, is another initiative that I have moving, he said, "Let me donate all the soccer balls to all the elementary schools."
Wow.
So he drove over all those soccer balls. I think there's like 300 soccer balls.
Wow.
And they were expensive $15 soccer balls. He had the light and people to work with him to get him to the next steps. He didn't have the disabilities. He had more behavioral, like he was just mad all the time, right? But he was a great student. So he would come to my classroom and he was awesome. I love the guy to death, right? And he came today and he's one of the most productive, successful students I've ever had. And that's a story to tell these people out there, these businesses.
Absolutely. But you understand, I need you to take some credit to the light that you gave that child. You know, that's very important.
Thank you.
Most of the times when parents get to us, they've already been beat up by the system. They feel abandoned.
The bad kid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Labeled. Well, the school doesn't know what to do with him. And so then the first thing that we start doing is reprogramming the parent. There's nothing wrong with your child. Your child either learns or sees things, just like you were saying, a little bit differently. The behavioral children, sometimes when they don't have a diagnosis, they have the worst spot because nobody wants to give them any understanding.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, you should be. Why? You should be a robot? We should just have all these little robots in place. So I love hearing that individuality and looking at the whole student, not just the moment that the child is in. And this goes out to my teachers that are tuned in. Remember that those kids that are walking in the door of the classroom, you're only getting a moment of them. Remember to look at that whole student. You will set the day by your energy that you give to that child as soon as they come into your door. So please do not prejudge them with the way that yesterday was or 2 weeks ago. Remember, it's a new opportunity to give a new moment of light to that child every time they come in your classroom. It's very important. That's the teacher and me coming out, because hearing these words that you're resonating, I'm going back into being in the classroom. You know, I tell everyone, and I'm sure that you have this, I get asked about, oh, you must love the school. And everyone's like, I hate the administrator side. I'm like, no, I do. The dark side. I like that. I'm going to start calling it the dark side. Yeah.
We were Star Wars. We were the good guys. They were the dark side. That was.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm a Trekkie. It's probably why it just fell out of there. But I feel that. And I feel it in this conversation that it's this love of a generation that needs to be understood.
It is.
And as community, if we stand together, then we eliminate the isolation that not just our parents feel, our kids feel, and not just the kids, business owners. You know, we're all in tough times right now. We're all looking at how do we fill job vacancies? How do we handle inflation? How do we handle the government and politics and things going on? Well, I'm going to let you know, as a business owner and a mom, right here, Matt Susin, okay? If you are in District 4, I need you to make sure that you get out and vote. People have given up their lives to ensure that we have the ability to have our voices be heard. Please do not take that as a disadvantage and get out there and vote. Let your voice be heard. And if you are in District 4 of Brevard County, please get out to those voting booths and give your vote for Matt Susin. Excuse me, Susan. I keep seeing it. Boy name.
Listen, at times in my life, I've said Susin.
I don't feel so
kids
bad.
were always picking on me, so I had to say Susan. So it's been tough. Like having a boy named Sue is tough. You know what I mean? So, but school board's tough too. Gotcha. So it fits right there. So thank you.
Well, typically I take us out of the show, but today, would you like to, because this will air before the election, would you like to give our audience a farewell from the Purple Couch so that they know, get out there for Matt Susin?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say thank you for everything that you guys have done. Thank you for your beautiful facility here. And I just wanted to say, if there's individuals out there that are companies, that are individuals who have who have the opportunity to bring their students to the program. Yvette Cruz at the school district would be willing to work with you and get involved in this. Companies, it's free for any company, free wages paid for through the federal government. And it's an opportunity that you will never, never, ever regret. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, you've heard it there. And just like the phone ringing, Mr. Susin has been so wonderful with his time to come here to speak to you all so that you can know these programs are available. So we will be coming to you all with more information. Follow us, subscribe, like. Remember, we're all community. We're all here together. Until next time, Pam and the Purple Couch. See you again.